Hey everybody, I'm Alan with Dad's Playing Games, and this is the 6th video I'm doing in a series on soldier strategies for the game of Frostgrave. Now in most of these videos I've grouped the soldiers into various classes, but in this video I'm focusing on just the Barbarian. And I'll be discussing his cost, his stats and equipment, then I'll discuss his uses by comparing him to soldiers mentioned in our previous soldier strategy videos. If you check the details below, you'll find timestamps as well as links to some of our other Frostgrave material. And if you haven't seen at least the videos on the fighters and the heavy soldiers, you might just want to go back and watch those videos before watching this video. And now we'll take a look at the Barbarian, starting with his cost. Being one of the premier soldiers of the game, it requires 100 gold crowns to convince a barbarian to join your warband. The only equipment the barbarian has is a two-handed weapon, but they have some impressive stats. Barbarians live for combat, and as such they have a fight +4, and their two-handed weapon allows them to deal an additional +2 damage to their enemies. However, their defense is kind of interesting. They wear no armor, making that stat a lowly 10, but they have a game-high health stat of 14. Another stat of the Barbarians that's higher than any other soldier in the game is their will of +3. And this can come in handy against certain playstyles or against wizards that like to cast spells like Mind Control. It seems a little strange to me that Barbarians resist spells better than the other soldiers, because in a lot of fantasy stories and games like Hero Quest, Barbarians typically have a weak mind. So I think the will stat in Frostgrave instead represents the character's determination and confidence. And you have to be confident to run around a frozen city with nothing but a giant sword and a loincloth. To wrap up their stats, Barbarians have an average move of 6, which lets them get around the battlefield fairly easily. And when we put all of this together, we have a soldier with the armor of a thug, a close resemblance to an Infantryman, the offense of a Templar, and a will higher than that of a treasure hunter. And so I'll be discussing how the Barbarian is used compared to these 4 soldiers, starting with the thug. These 2 soldiers share the same move and armor stat, and I think in some ways the Barbarian is a late campaign thug. That's because both soldiers are often used to charge into combat with reckless abandon, living and dying on the hopes of good attack rolls. Theme-wise, thugs do it because they're untrained and expendable, and Barbarians do it because they're fearless. Again, frozen city wearing a loincloth. Regardless of their motivations, Barbarians obviously get a lot more done in combat than a thug. I think a closer related soldier to the Barbarian would be the Infantrymen. They both wield two-handed weapons, and all of the Barbarian stats are equal to or better than that of an Infantryman, except that the Infantryman's armor stat is 1 higher. These 2 soldiers are the glass cannons of the game, both focusing on offense while neglecting their defense. Keeping these soldiers out of view from archers is important, and they both benefit greatly when they are supported in melee, as that makes them less likely to have to worry about defense and allows them to do some serious damage in combat. If you have an Infantryman late in a campaign, replacing them with a Barbarian is a solid choice. But as the gold crowns start flowing in and you consider hiring a heavy hitter, the struggle often arises between, do you hire a Barbarian or a Templar? These 2 soldiers both wield a two-handed weapon and have a fight of +4. Their defense is similar. The Barbarian has 2 more health while the Templar has 2 more armor. While they can both survive one 13 damage attack, I do think the higher armor is better, as the Templar is more likely to survive 2, maybe even 3 weaker attacks than the Barbarian. Unless you know you'll be making good use of the Barbarian's will stat, I think the hiring decision between these 2 really comes down to the question of mobility. There's a big difference between 5 move and 6 move, and if you're relying on the soldier's built-in natural running ability, then the Barbarian is usually the better choice. But if you've got a good, reliable means of magical movement, which can get Templars into combat easier, I think in those situations the Templar is better. The last comparison I want to make is comparing the Barbarian to the Treasure Hunter. And that's because I think a case could be made that the Treasure Hunter is the best soldier in this game. Both of these soldiers have a fight +4, and their defensive abilities are comparable. The Treasure Hunter is another soldier that has 2 less health than the Barbarian, but in this case they only have 1 more armor. The main decision point between which of these 2 soldiers to hire, I think, comes down to the higher move of the Treasure Hunter or the +2 damage of the Barbarian. If you need a soldier with versatility for combat and for treasure grabbing, I would say go with the Treasure Hunter. But if you just need someone to crush your enemy's skull, go with the Barbarian. And that is my assessment of the Barbarian. I'm interested to know your thoughts and experiences with this soldier, whether you agree or disagree with my assessment, and if you've got some other uses that I might have missed. So please let me know in the comments below, and while you're there, you can click like or subscribe so you can keep up with all the content that Dad's Playing Games is releasing. And with that, I'm Alan with Dad's Playing Games, and we'll see you on the next video.